Shalom. First and foremost, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Racha Kodash. Double honors to the elders and the apostles of Great Millstone, and peace and blessings to the elect. And today we're going to go into the book of Genesis, the 21st chapter. And this pretty much, we start to see the birth 19. Of and there came the birth of Isaac. And eventually the story starts to transition more into the life of Isaac as we continue on throughout. So this is Genesis 21:1. And the Lord Yahweh visited Sarah as he had said, and the Lord did unto Sarah as he had spoken. That is, he opened up her womb. Verse 2, for Sarah conceived and bare Abraham a son in his old age, at the set time of which God had spoken to him. So can you imagine that? With how old she was, to actually, be able to not only get pregnant, but also to actually go through that labor and be able to have the strength and everything to give birth to an actual child. That's something that even young women, if you're not careful, you got some women today that need a C-section, or they need these drugs to help them, actually go through that labor. So it goes to show you the power of the Lord. There's nothing impossible with the Lord, no matter how unheard of it may sound. And that's also the power of having faith. And Abraham called the name of his son that was born unto him, whom Sarah bare to him, Isaac. And Abraham circumcised his son Isaac, being 8 days old, as God had commanded him. And Abraham was 100 years old when his son Isaac was born unto him. And Sarah said, God hath made me to laugh, so that all that hear will laugh with me. All right, hence, the name Isaac, because it's like almost like any time his story of his birth was mentioned, it would cause you to laugh. Like Abraham laughed when the Lord told him within himself. Sarah laughed when the Lord told him within herself. But also, less of a, this laugh is less of a mocking laugh, right? But more of a joy, a joyous kind of laughter. And she said, who would have said unto Abraham that Sarah should have given children suck? For I have borne him a son in his old age. And this is like saying, who would have thought that Sarah, right, in her old age, would have actually been able to bear a son onto Abraham, and as it says, to give him suck. All right, so to be able to produce that lactate and be able to produce that breast milk and everything to to feed him. And the child grew and was weaned, and weaned meaning like eventually, because when you wean a child, they suck the breast milk, and then after a period of time, when they get weaned, they don't have to suck the breast milk anymore. They can start to eat solid foods. And that's also a mark in their growth. So as it says, and the child was weaned, and Abraham made a great feast the same day that Isaac was weaned. So it was like a celebratory occasion. And Sarah saw the son of Hagar the Egyptian, which she had borne unto Abraham, mocking. And this is what's his name? Ishmael. Because remember, at this point, they were still all living together. But she, man, you can imagine with the way Sarah treated Hagar. Today, they'd say she was like bougie. But she saw Ishmael basically making fun of Isaac probably at some point, kids, right? And she didn't like that too much. Wherefore she said unto Abraham, cast out this bondwoman and her son. So I want them gone. For the son of this bondwoman shall not be heir with my son, even with Isaac. So she's basically saying, I want them gone. I don't want to see them here. I don't want her son to be sharing an inheritance with my son. I don't want any conflict. No, they gotta go. And the thing was very grievous in Abraham's sight because of his son, because Remember, to Abraham, to Sarah, she might feel like no connection because it was, yeah, it was her husband's son, but that to her it's like, I didn't bear that child to him. He bare that child with a different woman, an Egyptian woman, a maid at that. But to Abraham, that was his seed still. So, to him, he felt, he still felt that affection is in the sense of that's still my son. And God said unto Abraham, let it not be grievous in thy sight because of the lad being a boy, and because of thy bondwoman. In all that Sarah hath said unto thee, hearken unto her voice, for in Isaac shall thy seed be called. Okay, so the Lord said, you know what? It's okay. Don't let it bother you, because whatever it is that Sarah is saying this time, actually listen to her. And in Isaac shall thy seed be called, meaning that the Lord, yes, Abraham had descendants, right? He had sons by Keturah, he had Ishmael, but Isaac was the seed that the Lord would recognize as Abraham's descendants who would gain his inheritance. Okay, like his true legitimate heir would go through Isaac. And let's look up the word called here. And in fact, it's good to understand this here, because when you go into the writings of Paul, he does make reference to this time, right? He makes examples and so on with comparing Hagar and the bondwoman and so on. But here it says, when you go into the word called, right, you have a couple of definitions here: to proclaim, to read aloud, to be called, to be summoned, to be named, to be chosen. Okay. And so when you're dealing with all of the seed that came from Abraham, Isaac was the chosen. They were the ones the Lord will recognize as his actual descendants. Hence, they are treated differently than those of Ishmael. Now, the other sons of Abraham were blessed, but not on the level that Isaac was. And also of the son of the bondwoman will I make a nation, because he is thy seed. See? So the Lord is saying, don't worry. You just send him out. I'm not going to just leave him out there. I'll give them a blessing as well, because he is of you. He is your seed. But there has to be a separation between Isaac and the rest. And Abraham rose up early in the morning and took bread and a bottle of water and gave it unto Hagar, putting it on her shoulder and the child, and sent her away. And she departed and wandered in the wilderness of Beersheba. And the water was spent in the bottle. Now, more than likely, she was probably going to either find a place to dwell over there, or maybe just try to make her way to Egypt. And the water was spent in the bottle, meaning eventually they ran out of water. And she cast the child under one of the shrubs. So she ended up placing Ishmael, he's still young, under some tree somewhere. And then she went and sat down over against him a good way off. So she basically puts him there, and she's going to try and put as much distance between them as possible. It says, as it were a bow shot, meaning the distance of an average, if you were to stretch a arrow in the bow pretty far and release it, the average distance it could travel. is about how far she separated herself. And her reasoning, for she said, let me not see the death of the child. Because at this point, she didn't have hope that they would survive. So she would rather, have him die where she wouldn't have to see it, because it'd be more painful for her. At least that was her reasoning. And she sat over against him and lifted up her voice and wept. And God heard the voice of the lad, and the angel of God called to Hagar out of heaven. Remember his name, right? Yashamai Allah, which is heard, right, of God. And said unto her, what aileth thee, Hagar? Fear not, for God hath heard the voice of the lad where he is. Arise, lift up the lad, and hold him in thine hand, for I will make him a great nation. So don't forget what I told you before concerning him. And I've heard him crying. you guys ain't gonna die today, right? So go get him. You guys are gonna survive. And as I told you before, I'm gonna make a great nation out of him. And God opened her eyes, and she saw a well of water. And she went and filled the bottle with water and gave the lad drink. So the Lord had it to where after she went and got uh, Ishmael, you know, probably just looking around or just as she was right there, the Lord just, now it says he opened her eyes, so more than likely there might have been a well around there, but she just hadn't seen it before. And so the Lord had it to where her eyes finally hit it, and she was like, oh shoot, life. And God was with the lad, and he grew and dwelt in the wilderness and became an archer. And he dwelt in the wilderness of Paran, and his mother took him a wife out of the land of Egypt. And it came to pass at that time that Abimelech and Phicol, the captain of his host, came unto Abraham. So this is now after the situation with Ishmael. So after some time, Abimelech and his captain come unto Abraham, saying, God is with thee in all that thou doest. Now therefore swear, pardon me. Now therefore swear unto me here by God, that thou wilt not deal falsely with me, nor with my son, nor with my son's son, but according to the kindness that I have done unto thee, thou shalt do unto me, and to the land wherein thou hast sojourned. So basically he's saying, look, I know that God is with you. I know that you are powerful, right? But swear to me that you're not gonna basically pull some underhanded stuff on me, nor my sons after me, because one thing that they could fear, or they would fear, is if you had a stranger, like what Haman tried to do, right? If you have a stranger come and dwell among you and he just keeps getting greater and greater and greater, he could eventually take over, right? And overthrow your dominion to have the dominion for himself, right? So he just said, look, whatever it is, just deal fairly with me as I've dealt with you. Thou shalt do unto me and the land wherein thou hast sojourned. And Abraham said, I will swear. And Abraham reproved Abimelech because of a well of water. So now after this, at another point in time, Abraham, as it says, reproved Abimelech because of a well of water. So he basically, let's look into that word, but you could say he confronted him about it, or brought it up to him. Right, to decide, to rebuke, to correct, to be right, to argue. And basically he was, as we're about to read, it was concerning a well of water which Abimelech's servants had violently taken away. So this was the well, let's say, that Abraham's servants would use. And Abraham, being that these were Abimelech's servants that did this, Abraham is thinking, wait, we just, we're on peace terms. Why are your men, violently taking away this well of water from my men? So that's why, as it says, he reproved Abimelech. So that would be like the initial interaction concerning it. Like, yo, what are you doing? What's up? What's happening here? I thought we were good. And Abimelech said, I wot not who have done this thing. So I don't know who did this. Neither didst thou tell me, neither heard I of it, but today. So this had probably gone on maybe for a bit of time. And Abimelech is saying, well, I didn't even know this was happening, and you didn't mention anything. This is the first time I'm hearing of it. And Abraham took sheep and oxen and gave them unto Abimelech, and both of them made a covenant. And Abraham set 7 ewe lambs, which are female lambs, of the flock by themselves. So he separated out 7 female lambs. And Abimelech said unto Abraham, what mean these 7 ewe lambs, which thou hast set by themselves? So why have you separated these 7 over here? And he said, for these 7 ewe lambs shalt thou take of my hand, that they may be a witness unto me that I have digged this well. So in agreeing that this well belongs to me, these lambs will be that witness. Therefore he called that place Beersheba, because there they swear, both of them. And when you go into the word or the name Beersheba, not Bathsheba, but Beersheba, it's Ba'ara Shabai. And it says here, well of the sevenfold oath. And that's because I believe the Ba'ara is where you get well from. But the word Shabai has two meanings, right? It's the same Hebrew that you can see here, but in one sense it means an oath, and in the other sense it means the number 7. So when you see here, this is still Shabai, this is still Shabai, but they're different Strong's numbers associated with it. So this first one here, when you go into it, Shabai, is the number 7, right? And this same one here, a different Strong's number association, but this is an oath or to swear. Okay, so hence you have Ba'arashabai or Beersheba being the well of the sevenfold oath, because that was basically what this is how this came about anyway. Thus they made a covenant at Beersheba. Then Abimelech rose up, and Phicol, the chief captain of his host, and they returned into the land of the Philistines. And Abraham planted a grove in Beersheba, and which is just trees, and called there on the name of the Lord Yahweh, the everlasting God. Because remember, at this point, the Lord hadn't set up like a house, right? And we've already gone through that, right? As you go into the future, starting with David, the Lord putting that in his mind, so that eventually a temple would be built during the time of Solomon, and that's where we would come to worship. But at this point, the Lord hadn't done that yet. Okay, so that's why you would have different men that would worship on high places, though they would serve the Lord. But in the ancient times, it was customary where that's why even on the left hand, when people worship idols, they did it on high places. Okay. In fact, let's type that in here. Why did ancient people worship on high places? Yeah, ancient people worshipped on high places because they believed it brought them closer to the heavens and to their gods. This practice was likely also influential by the idea, or influenced by the idea, that a high place could be a symbolic connection to creation or a way to be physically closer to a deity residing in the sky. So there's a bit of information for you. Verse 34, and Abraham sojourned in the Philistines' land many days. And that brings us to the end of the book of Genesis, the 21st chapter. So Lord willing, that was edifying to the elect. In closing, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham Yahushai, Bahasham Recha Kodesh. And until next time, Shalom.